This is going to be our first official show of the offseason. So I've been getting a ton of comments, Felix, about are you guys going to go through all the new hires? We're pretty much full. I think the
No, we're
Browns
talking Jerome Tang's new buyout
yeah.
at K-State, the $18 million. That's what we're on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're talking. Yeah, no, we're going to cover that. That's what I think. That's the first thing to do because it really lays the groundwork for the rest of the season as we go through. We're going to start getting news. We're already starting to see the kind of the first designated to be cut. They're not technically cut. They won't happen until March 1st, but we'll have to have a big show after that. This off season, I'm starting to go through my studies like Monday, which we're recording this on Monday. I dropped my Bengals article, kind of going through their whole process of kind of how he salvaged that defense. Al Golden did. I pissed off a bunch of people on it's always the anonymous guy on Twitter and the people that don't follow you. And so like, they're the ones that are like, I said saved instead of salvaged, just a word choice. They're like, he didn't save nothing. He's terrible. I'm like, oh, okay. Anon people, I'm sorry, your Bengals fandom, but he did. That whole defense like completely flipped in the back half to keep his job. But that's kind of the things that we're going to be going in as we go through this, and then also with all the news. Which let's start off with kind of right hot off the press right before we came on here. Tyreek Hill is released. I think the decision with him and then Tua are going to be really, really important because from what I'm hearing, Quinn Ewers is probably going to be the starter. I would probably say 90% sure that he's going to be the starter going in.
Well, and I think them keeping some of the structure, some of the offensive structure, being that they're like, all right, Mike McDaniel get out as the figurehead of the face of the team, the guy, the pregame and halftime speech guy. All right, you're out. But all right, we're keeping Bobby Slowick in. We're going to keep things structurally the same offensively. And they gave Quinn Ewers a couple of some snaps. I mean, a couple of starts at the end of the season because it's like we all know the Tua situation is just kind of like, all right. And I mean, we'll ask this question in another circumstance here, but like, who's interested in Tua at this point? And that's what's really interesting in that circumstances, because like, what do you get for a guy that's 45-50 million dollars, something like that on your books? And it's like there's nothing really out there for him. It's not like a straight up Goff for Stafford trade out there. There's nothing like that out there for a Tua deal. Kyler Murray, and even then,
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, this is the difference, right? This is like, I think what's different about Tua is you have to factor in the injuries, and you just have to factor in that he just has not, that arm has consistently just kind of deflated over the past couple years. That was the running joke when Hill got on that, is like, oh my gosh, like, look at these balls.
The first video they posted from the moment he got there was Tua floating something.
And then they made Hill
on air.
Hill had to go on that like podcast tour where he told everybody how awesome Tua was. And I think like, look, he was perfect for that system. I just think over time you just saw the degradation of just him health wise. And look, the concussion, and that you can skirt around the concussions all you want. That's part of it too. But really, even his body, like he just was not moving very well.
He also said he can't see over offensive lines.
Yeah, I'm not you have the Kyler Murray problem.
And you have the Kyler Murray problem. Yeah.
Well, and that's, I think, that's an interesting point that you bring up, because I did hear somebody talk about how like Drew Brees fooled like a whole generation of GMs.
Even more so Russell Wilson, because he's like, he's so fast, he's so athletic.
Russell Wilson too. Yes, you have to. Well, and what's interesting about Russell Wilson is he's actually a deep ball thrower, and so it kind of gets you a little bit of like, okay, well, we can save him, right? Like Baker Mayfield's another one that's hovering right at about 6 feet. So you start getting these guys.
And so is Jalen Hurts and Caleb Williams, big deep ball throwers, guys who are accurate down the field. I mean, maybe not over the middle of the field in Hurts' case, but guys who have made plays in the NFL. Guys like Tua, if you don't have that extra thing outside of your athleticism, and once that's gone because you're at injury risk, what is it? What
Yeah,
are you
and
as an athlete?
I
as a
agree with
quarterback?
you. Yeah, I think like it's another Chad Pennington situation, right? Of where you get a guy. If you remember Chad Pennington, he might be a little bit too old for you, Felix, but he was essentially like Tua. Like he wasn't going to throw the ball down the field, but he was elite accuracy, anything in front of his face. And I just think over time, that offense, he was perfectly fit for that offense, but then it just kind of waned, and it just never came to fruition. I just never liked it. So you wrote in our show notes, and I think this is a really good thing to bring up, because where is he going to go? I always too, guys like Hill have really short careers because their whole premise of being is built on the fact that they're just faster than everybody.
I can get there faster than you can.
And really, only
what?
Darryl Green. Do you remember Darryl Green? Only
Way too
Darryl
old
Green.
for me. Too old for me. But yes, I'm
The
familiar.
Commander's corner. He was like my age at 40, running 4.3s. Like he was like the Tom Brady of like, how did he just never get help? Like it obviously Tom Brady's not fast, but it was just like, how did he keep his health like that? Like he just was so good for so long. I just think like we see this, like people forget too, like it was one day Revis Island, the next day he couldn't cover anybody, right? And it was like you just fall off a genetic cliff, like you just fall off of that athletic ability, especially in a position where you're so focused on you're the fastest human being out there. And then
you're not, and especially how horrendous his injury was. It's just like, damn, it's like, can you really do anything else other than like being faster and like running after the catch, the change of direction type of things? Like, what can you do outside?
Well, and that's my point, is that he's not a technician. This is not a Jerry Rice. This is not a guy. I think even like a Justin Jefferson, who is just an elite route runner. He finds places to get open. He runs good routes.
He's not smooth like JSN is. He's not in and out. Yeah.
He is, I'm faster than you are. You're going to get me the ball, and I'm going to run and outrun everybody. I'm going to break your trail. I'm going to break your path to me. I'm going to continue to run. Your pursuit angle doesn't mean anything. And like you said, with this injury, how does he transition? And I think the other question too is, does he want to transition into a different type of player?
With all that being said, bring him back to Kansas City.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that he's what, like, they wanted Xavier Worthy to be that. But I go back to Xavier Worthy and even Adonai Mitchell. I think there will be some revisionist history on this. Mark my words. And look, I am a Quinn Ewers homer, if you know my background. So I am a little bit salty about this. I think, though, when we look back on those teams, the deep ball tracking ability of Adonai Mitchell and then actually being able to catch the ball, and then Xavier Worthy not being able to make a play after unless he's catching the ball on the run and he's already in front of people, is another factor. So I do think he's going to be interesting. How healthy is he? I think will be kind of the say. But yeah, they're saving money, but he's not the only one in Miami that's going to have. So that's our big news. I will say too, I don't really want to get into a bunch of free agent stuff and draft. That's not just, I'm not really interested in that. But I will say this class, having done some research and looking at it, this is not a great free agent class. And the people that are kind of like the prime people, like Reek Woolen's going to be a really interesting, because there's a bunch of defenses that could use him as like a boundary corner, but it's like, do you trust him? What Reek Woolen are we going to get?
How many teams are like, ooh, that's our number one, and then he's Reek Woolen?
So who in this free agency is going to be interesting? Because there's always a surprise guy that gets cut. There's always a guy that gets cut. But this class, just like who's going to hit the books, either one, those guys like Jaquan Brisker, is probably the best safety. They're not letting him walk out the door in Chicago. Okay, but like Reek Woolen, you have more guys like Reek Woolen that are like, okay, he had one really good year. or he's older, he's coming off of an injury like the Jalen Thompson, and for the Cardinals, how healthy is he? Tyreek Hill seems like awesome. Like, oh, what if he was with
Great
like
idea.
the Bills, right, in that passing game? And then you're like, yeah, but like, do we really know? Like, are you getting just another Shakir? Because like that's essentially what he's gonna be like if he can't run really fast. Good.
Yeah. He should just wear Converse out there. Just put him run faster, jump higher.
Yeah, just get some Converse. Yeah, just get some Converse.
All right. Let's start here with the Raiders, where it's kind of interesting where Patrick Graham, we talked about this multiple times, where like he's kind of he's the Lazarus of it all. He's just staying alive, where like he got with the Giants, he kept a job for a few times. He stayed with the Raiders through like 3 head coaches.
Yes.
And then he's going to stay on with the Steelers, and we'll talk about their coaching situation as the show progresses on. But the Raiders keep Rob Leonard as their defensive coordinator, was their defensive line coach. And then, so is it something like we wish we could have kept Patrick Graham, but also he was like, yeah, TJ Watt's over here or something like that. Like, it's like, what's the give and take here? Do they think they're losing Max Crosby? What's the deal here?
I think that's what it was. I think that they just wanted a different voice. They were going to have to get rid of Patrick Graham, right? Because I think with Patrick Graham, it's almost like Jim Schwartz. Like, you've survived everything. You obviously the talent was obviously an issue. And I think we've talked about this maybe before here. I know I've talked about it before on several different Raiders podcasts of like, look, that defense that Patrick Graham ran this year is not the defense that Patrick Graham ran the 2 prior years. I mean, he put Mahomes through hell. This was Carroll wanting to run cover 3 at the highest rate in the NFL. I mean, it looked like Gus Bradley out there. So I don't know. Like, to me, you got to move on, but you're going to piss Max Crosby off, right? So, like, Max Crosby I really think Max Crosby doesn't want to leave the Raiders. I think he sees himself as a Raider. I think he wants to be a Raider, but I think he was like, please give me competency. I think what they looked at internally, and they're like, and I think that there are some other guys that are looking for this, is like, where can we get an Anthony Campanelli like the Jaguars? Where, you look at Leonard's background. He's worked with McDonald. He worked with Flores. He worked with Graham. He worked with Spagnuolo. So, like, you start looking at his background, and you're like,
get all that hybrid that mix all of the stuff together, like you saw in Jacksonville. That really, like, at the end of the year, Trevor Lawrence, it looked like he had a great year for like the first half, even like the first two thirds ish of the year. That defense was really, really good and kept them afloat, and it just wasn't as brilliant as it was earlier in the year. And Trevor was at that brilliant as the year ended.
Yeah. And to me, I think too, it's really interesting. We're going to talk about this too, because like Jim Schwartz with the Browns, the Cardinals, these are like kind of, quote unquote, poor organizations, right? Like, I know the Raiders got an injection of cash and, they got Brady walking around, but these are also guys that this organizations that just don't like, they're not trying to hit home runs. And so they're trying to like, how can we finesse a way of like, how can we stumble upon a really
next best thing that did, like, the Jags are the Jags, if you want to be honest. I know they had the 2017 Saxonville run and like the 90s run with Mark Brunell, but like,
it looks to me like the same recipe though, right?
Yeah.
You go get a hot shot coordinator that's directly tied to one of the guys had proven success, right? So we go and get Kubiak. But defensively, we're going to hire a no-name guy that nobody really knows, but he's been around a bunch of places, and we feel like he can put it together. I think, too, that this is a really young defensive roster that's about to lose a ton of people on it. I think they're going to completely jettison all of their linebackers. I think they're only going to have like,
they've always had a young, bad defense, though. Like, what's going on with the Raiders for like the last 6 years of just having a young, bad defense?
Yes, it's just, but I do
their secondary's just been bad. Then they traded Ja'Cory and Bennett, shouts former teammate of mine. But like, that was like one of their best players in their secondary and shipped them to Philadelphia. It was like, what are you doing?
Trayvon Moore goes. They let Trayvon Moore
yeah,
walk.
like the players that you're like, all right, here we go. You got something there, and then they're like, all right, let's get them out of here.
Yeah, so I do think. Look, I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you are a fan of football and you're just like kind of like how we are, it's like I'm interested.
I mean, like you didn't put it. We didn't put it together until now. At least I didn't read it on the notes like this. But it is kind of interesting to kind of take that blueprint and see if it works over here. And we're going to get into this a little bit later. How long does the rest of the division last around the Raiders? Because Andy Reid's old as hell. Sean Payton.
Yeah, so that's another element of it.
Jim Harbaugh also. He's got like 4 more years, and like, all right, Jim, we're done with all your crap if you don't have a Super Bowl. And it doesn't look like things are getting around there. But that's a conversation for later.
Yeah, we're going to cover all, like, we're going to go through, we're going to start here. We'll cover the Raiders here in a bit, and then obviously we'll talk a little bit about the Chargers. But let's dive into the Giants really quick, because I think this is the most interesting one for a number of reasons. Number one being John Harbaugh answers to one person, and essentially the GM has been sequestered to a desk, and he only is involved in scouting.
No way he's drafting 2027. No way. No,
I don't think he's there. From what I've heard, he has a really good relationship with the owner. The owner wasn't wanting to, this is really weird. This is, again, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. These guys are really awesome.
They've got tapes somewhere. They've got the files. They know who's redacted.
Either that or sports makes you crazy. Like these owners, like, I just have to have a guy that I believe, like, that I know and trust. And it's like, yeah, but like he proved over and over, like they could. But here, to his point, and this will be the only. They actually draft relatively well. It's just
Malik
they don't.
Was hurt this year. Scatterboo got hurt, and like the defense is.
But they don't keep him. They've, like, Julian Love, who just won a Super Bowl, arguably one of the best safeties in the NFL. They just let him walk. Xavier McKinney,
he was a giant,
who had like 9 picks last year, played really well this year for the Packers. Let him walk. And we're not even talking about Saquon Barkley, because everybody kind of knows that. And that whole deal was a disaster, which is why they canned the offseason Hard Knocks, because after that, all the NFL owners and the GMs were like, oh, hell no, I ain't putting on that, because then everything, it's going to be there. And why would HBO not show that? You can't hide that. Like, if you just didn't have it, people would lose respect for HBO. Not if they ever had any, but it's just like, it's become so performative too, that show. I just quit watching it a couple years ago. At the beginning of it, it was awesome because you got real raw stuff, but now it's just kind of performative.
I love Khalil Pimpleton, a few years ago with the Detroit Lions, but that was kind of the last Hard Knocks thing that I love. But like, it is like embarrassing that it is so obvious that, like, the head coach is skipping the ladder and just going and say, all right, the Mara family, what's going on? Like, it's like there is this how the order of things, how things are supposed to go, and you're kind of setting up your organization for, like, things aren't going to go well in 8-9 months. However,
it's like Office Space when they're like, what exactly do you do here, Bob? And it's like, hey, I do stuff here, it's like, nah. Like, it's basically what that is that he had a contract. They knew they were going to throw a bunch of money at the head coach, and they were going to have to throw some money at coordinators, because we'll get to this in just a second. But I think it ended up being one of those where it was like, at this point, the owner was like, we got to pinch some pennies. I'll give you a year, and then just give me a year. Let me get through this, get him out of the contract, and then next year. Because, if he's there next year, I just don't know. Like, what are we doing?
If they need a quarterback by then, if Jackson Dart isn't the guy and they're drafting in the top of the class or something like that, so it does kind of make things interesting. And we can get to the coordinators now, because I think it makes his coordinator hire so obvious, because it's like Andy Reid called up a guy in his coaching tree, like, hire Matt, please. I had to, like, sneaky fire him. Please, for the love of God.
Yeah, the low fire of, like, hey, we really appreciate for all the stuff that you've done. And, like, we just never tried to bring you back, and we brought back the enemy.
Right. And like it was just such an obvious thing to do. And then like they bring in Denard Wilson. We talked at length about how we believe that that's going to be a really good hire, and like all of the different pieces that they have on defense. I think that's going to be a really interesting defense next year, especially in that division.
Well, I love Denard Wilson.
Things are.
And I do like Nagy is an interesting, you said it, Nagy is an interesting hire. I think he's one of those guys that he's okay as an offensive coordinator. He's going to have a senior head coach that's going to be like, run the ball, please. Like, do your job, run the ball. And so I think you'll keep him in check at some point. Denard Wilson, to me, this is basically him saying, I messed up. I should have given you the job. I didn't give you the job. Come be my defensive coordinator with the Giants. I think that's a really good hire. If you go, I actually just got done watching the Titans because I always start back to front. So I watch the worst teams and then I do the best teams as the season gets closer.
So you're still watching the Chiefs at the end, right?
Yeah. I'll watch Chiefs. Right, I think what they're in like the 20s, something like that. The Broncos are
the 9th overall pick, whatever that is.
Exactly. So I'm looking at them. It was not. Look, there wasn't like he made a change or he did. He basically kept that thing together on the back end, and really, they just don't have. That's a defensive roster that just didn't have a lot of guys. If there was anything, they really wanted to press a lot. And former Chief L'Jarius Sneed, he's just never. Look, the Chiefs look really smart in letting him walk, like letting him go. They look really smart in doing so. They obviously knew he had kind of maxed out.
He had like a knee thing going on too.
Right.
It was just such a weird situation for sure.
Because at the time it was kind of shocking. You're like, dude, he's like,
he had an all-pro season and they let him go for a 4th-round pick.
Right. And then I think you found out after that it was just kind of like, oh yeah, he wasn't that great. So I think with that roster now, they've got to fix the corner room. They've got to figure that out. Like the Devin Banks kid never figured it out. And then Flott, which we've talked about, him and Josh Jobe have their ascending career. Like everybody wants to throw them in the trash can and then they end up having a good season. But is that sustainable? Newman looked like he was going to be good. He wasn't good in the scheme last year. So there's some things that they've got to figure out on the back end. But I think front-wise, this is a dangerous unit. They can stop the run and they can get after the passer. Brian Burns is good.
Yeah, and here's what's kind of interesting. If this team is going to be good, and this is a lot of projecting, think about what John Harbaugh did in the preseason. Like they went undefeated for however many years in preseason. I think this will be really interesting, like a training camp, mini camp, rookie teams, and like after the drafts and after they've got free agents, whatever that looks like, and then they go into a preseason. We'll know early if the Giants are going to be something to reckon with. And again, looking at the NFC East next year, knowing how combustible everybody is everywhere, the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders, who knows what the Giants look like next year, and with a stable force. John Harbaugh is the best head coach in that division. I don't care who else is there.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look around the division, I think the Eagles are a dumpster fire is just waiting for the Molotov cocktail to get thrown into it, right? Mm-hmm. Like we are just waiting for somebody in Philly to just do something stupid. I mean, it seemed to me like Fangio begrudgingly came back. Right? Like he was like, I'll do this one more time. One more time. Like, I'll come back. It's like he just wants to go sit over in Jersey and hang out and just like, go to like Bruins games and Phillies games. And it's just like
he wants to be a Philly guy. He doesn't want to coach the Eagles. He just wants to be a Philly guy.
He just wants to be there. Like, just let him be there. But he's done the defensive consultant thing where he golfed in Palo Alto for a year. Like, he's done that. So begrudgingly come back. Then you look at like Dallas. I think Dallas has some high potential. I don't think it'll be this year. My only worry is, can Dak survive long enough? Can we get it to that second year with Christian Parker rebuilding that whole defense? Because I do think offensively they're going to be able to score points. I think they're still going to have problems. And then the Commanders, Jalen Daniels, will he stay healthy? What's the defense going to look like? Because, they're kind of doing their whole little thing of like completely switching up what they're doing.
Tearing it down but like keeping the roof for some reason.
Yeah. So I don't know. But I do agree if there is some positivity, because I know like Danny Heifetz, who I've talked about here, he's a good friend of mine, does the Ringer Fantasy Football podcast. But he's a Giants fan. I'm like, hey, there's some positivity coming on, man. I don't want to get you all fired up. You guys are not the dumpster fire that the Jets are. So speaking of, let's segue from the former Baltimore head coach to Jesse Minter, who this is the most Ravens hire ever. I mean, as soon as Harbaugh got let go, I think everybody was like, well, you can't get Mike McDonald. Get the next best thing, which is going to be Jesse Minter. He's essentially McDonald light, right? I mean, I think everybody views them. They've had the same career arc. He goes, he was at Michigan after, then he goes to the Chargers, has some success, and then
it only gets better because they make the hire fairly early, and then McDonald goes and wins the Super Bowl, and they look great. Like the defense looks really good in the Super Bowl, and so it's like, yeah, look what we're about. This is what
we're trying to do, and I think they got I thought getting Anthony Weaver again. Denard, we've talked about this multiple times. I have no idea. I really think John Harbaugh not getting one of those guys to come back, I think was just insane. And it just really proves to you that, look, everybody focused on the offense and Lamar, but the defense is really what failed. And look, Zach Orr probably got thrown into a situation that was not fair to him. And I've said that before. It was not fair to
31.
him. Right.
He's a couple years older than me.
He wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared. Or going to Seattle to go with Mike McDonald, which I think is going to be great for him. That's going to be great for his career. I think he will get another shot. I think he will. He actually didn't do terrible in both of those seasons. Like, they got better. It just happened to be that you've got Jesse Minter doing magic over with the Chargers with that roster and really that secondary outside of Derwin James. And then you've got Mike McDonald, who goes off and wins a Super Bowl. You have Denard Wilson, who everybody's like, he's literally making lemonade out of lemons in Tennessee. And Anthony Weaver in the same boat is down there with, look, that Dolphins roster is horrendous on defense. They're probably going to release Bradley Chubb. They got the Seiler kid, who is pretty good inside. They don't.
Their whole thing in free agency is just come on down to Miami. We got nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, if Minkah Fitzpatrick we said that, we remember during the season, we said that was a weird trade. Like, they basically you traded one for another, and you just traded a deficiency for another deficiency. So they're a problem. But I think if you look at this roster, so Jesse Minter goes out and he gets Declan Doyle. If you don't know who Declan Doyle is, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bears. He's also a Sean Payton guy. Worked under Sean Payton, was a tight ends coach. So he is kind of a young rising star.
And like 29, like he's a child.
Yeah, he's super young. And so I think you getting, see, this is what is also going to happen with Blau in the Commanders, to go back to our commander statement. They're take a running quarterback, right? Just put him in a movement-based offense, where in movement of like motions, but also dash, so the half rollouts, get him in a full waggle and a boot, like get him moving. That just amplifies it. So I think Lamar will have a situation where, these are easy intermediate throws, which I think their offense, their personnel too, is perfectly fit for what is about to happen. None of those receivers do you feel really like, they're just going to go win something outside. Zay Flowers is going to eat in the intermediate. I think both of the tight ends are going to be really good in this system as well. So I'm really excited about this. I think this is a good hire. Anthony Weaver is we're getting the band back together. That defensive roster needs to be a little bit rebuilt, but all those players will speak the same language. So he's just hitting. And Minter, it comes from that tree too. So I think that this is going to accelerate it. This is, to me, this might be one of the better. We're going to look back next year and we're going to be like, the freaking Ravens again did it the right way, because they're one of the best run organizations in all of football.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Titans. I saw somewhere that said he's going to be the next Vrabel or something.
Saleh?
Yeah. Yeah, Robert Saleh with the Titans is going to be the next variable, which I can see. Defensive coach, he looks like he can still play. Whatever, I get it. But he's filling out his staff of former head coaches. You hate Gus Bradley, Brian Daboll.
Look, I don't hate Gus Bradley. Look, I don't hate anybody. But when you only do one thing, and you don't have any diversity, that's why I think Saleh will be heavy-handed. He won't call it, but it will definitely be heavy-handed. Look, that defense alone runs a lot of close post anyway. I think he's going to add a little bit of quarters, which, by the way, Gus Bradley started adding at the end of it. Bradley, I think, can actually help him with the pressure packages. One of the things, look, Gus Bradley runs 4-3, cover 3. When he doesn't, he's going to send 6, and he's just going to go play cover 0. He's going to melt your face, right? He's going to try and punch you right square in the nose. So I think I like that, because if there's one thing that's missing in that 49ers scheme, that Saleh scheme, is really just a blitz package. They have forever been the lowest blitz rate, medium to high stunt rate. They don't do anything. It's very player centric, and you're going into a roster that doesn't have a lot of players. The interior D-line's great. You're going to have to figure out the edges, name a linebacker, and then you've got maybe 2 pieces in the secondary. They got rid of McCreary, which I still think is insane that they got rid of McCreary. I know that he was on a roller coaster, but this is also, which I'm surprised you didn't lead with this, this is the baldest coaching staff probably ever put together in any level of football.
Just milk duds and whoppers.
I mean, it's insane. It's almost as though it's a bit, right? You're just this can't be real. But then you look at it and you're like, none of this is Photoshop. Literally every single one is an older dude with a bald head.
I just imagine a conference room he's hired. He's just each and every one of them looking like Pac-Man.
It was completely random. I had these guys on my list, and it's do you have an affinity for guys that don't have hair? Do you all are you all commiserating together? Is that what it is? I just think it's hilarious. That's because so it's just
the whole staff is bald. It's pretty crazy.
It really is. I do like the staff. I think Brian Daboll with Cam Ward is going to be really good. I think it'll be really good for Cam Ward. I think that they just don't have anything on the edges. They don't have it on defense. They don't have it on offense.
I was about to say, it's like Westbrook Akine, and that's about it. And is their first round pick a wide receiver?
It has to be, right? But then you're but the O-line. And it's I don't know, man. I really do think that don't go full. I think you can find some guys in this draft. I think you can find a safety in the second round. You can obviously find linebackers. I think that there will be some pieces that you can get in free agency that don't break the bank. I think this is going to be a really weird year in free agency of where kind of as I'm looking at these, because these are the teams, when you start from the back, I like starting from the back before free agency, because you're really looking at these are the people that are going to be the ones that are throwing a lot of cash at people, right? But I think this is one of those years, even with the Titans, where it's you got to try and find value in youth. And I think that's where this free agency class is strong. It's not strong on the high end, right? You're not going to go get a game wrecker from it. Or if you do, they may end up not being a game wrecker because of injuries and stuff.
Right. All right. We talked a little bit about the Raiders and the Rob Leonard move to promote him to their defensive coordinator move at the beginning. They haven't hired an offensive coordinator yet. I think there's going to be still some moving pieces with the Raiders just because their new head coach was hired the latest because he was coaching the latest in the Super Bowl, obviously. But bringing in Fernando Mendoza, I think the biggest question with this is do you believe that Mendoza and Kubiak are going to be a fit? Because hopefully this will be the partnership for the next 10 to 15 years if you're the Raiders and things go well. And if the things, like I said earlier, because Andy Reid's old, Sean Payton old, Jim Harbaugh old, the Chiefs, the run might be old, the run might be over. The Chargers might charge it all the time. So it might be you guys in this division. Hard to believe I'm saying that. And I mean, we're AFC West teams fans, but this could be the dawn of the new beginning. And I'm just saying because it's early, because it's you just hired the coach, you're about to draft the quarterback. This should be peak optimism right now, but also it's the Raiders.
Yeah, I know. So actually, that just happened. Probably, I think it was like late in the afternoon. So, Andrew Janico, so the quarterback coach for the Seahawks, is going to come with Clint Kubiak. So you're going to have essentially what the Seahawks were going to run. I think you're going to get that. It's the Shanahan system. I mean, Kubiak's dad was John Elway's backup, was a longtime head coach in the NFL, offensive coordinator in the NFL. So it's going to be
Bowl with the Broncos.
Yep, and it's going to be that system. And so I think Mendoza is the perfect. He reminds me a lot of like a Burrow, where
he looks like Kirk Cousins, like in the face. But
I'm
also
not saying he's a Burrow comp. I actually agree. He's Kirk Cousins if he could run.
Yeah. I think
that's where I get
Kirk Cousins had a great career. I say that, and he hasn't retired yet. But like Kirk Cousins had a great career. If you can get like a 4-time Pro Bowler out of Fernando Mendoza and a draft that didn't really have any quarterbacks outside of him, and you took him number 1 overall at the quarterback position, positional value, not bad. But also like you hope things go better because he's the number 1 overall pick and so on and so forth. But it is going to be interesting to see like if this is like if that's what Brady and like the brain trust with the Raiders, if that's what the move was, like we got to get a child as our head coach because we have geriatrics all around us.
Well, I will say this. I think that was one part of it, but this is also a classic NFL move of where we hired an extremely old dude. And so then, or we hired an offensive guy. So we're going to hire a defensive guy, like they go like, oh, well, we did this time. So we'll do the opposite next time. Well, I think to your point, like it's probably a mix of that, of where they look around and it's like, maybe we can be the young innovative. We're going to have to find edges in innovation, and we're going to have to find edges because we're going to be extremely young roster. And so we need having that. I think too, all of this people on this staff are young. They're all like under 50, right?
Yeah.
And which is young for the NFL. And so I do think that that's a little bit of a signal. I also am hoping, and like obviously taking off my Broncos fandom hat, I'm also hoping that this is a signal that there is some long-term planning by the Raiders. I felt like the Pete Carroll was literally Pete Carroll.
Like, let's get us on track. If you can win us 8 games this year, let's go. And like with Geno,
but it was never a long-term. Like, where was it gonna go? Like he's gonna be the head coach of you in his 80s. I think if there's a guy that could have done it, it's him. But I'm like, we're really gonna roll out an 80-year-old head coach in the NFL with his 2 sons as like in key positions. Like Bill
Belichick got fired for that.
Yes, exactly. So it never
the same exact scenario.
It never really set well with me. I was like, this is such a short-term like stability, like, or kind of like with the Browns, like which we'll talk about here in a second, but like, why didn't you just hire the defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could have done that. Like, the same thing. It's the same thing there of like, if you really wanted a long-term solution and you're going to
get a black head coach out of it too.
Like, that is true. And we've talked about that. Like, and so that's the other thing too, is like, it's a trickle-down effect too. Of like, when you get a guy like Zach Orr, because that's the other complaint. It's like, well, there's not a lot of black coordinators, and there's definitely not a lot of black offensive coordinator. So it's like you get guys in situations that aren't necessarily ready to do it. They fail. And then it's like, okay, well, now we have to wait a couple more turns before that happens. But I do agree with you, like in that sense of like, you had a quality coach. Why didn't you just give him the shot? Now, obviously we don't know, Felix and I don't know any of the background behind any of this, but it is interesting to me that was so short-sighted in why they did that. And then now it's like, okay, hopefully they didn't go full on pendulum to the other side and like, we're just going to hire a bunch of young dudes and it's going to be fun, right? Because like we've seen that happen. Like I recommend everybody go look at the Cliff Kingsbury experience at Texas Tech that first year, and it was wild. The stories out of that were wild. So like, let's not do a bunch of young guys just partying it up and living at the office all the time. Not saying that that's the case, but I'm just saying like, don't go the other way. Have some.
We're in Vegas too. Good God.
Yeah. So will be interesting. I think I'm hoping that this is a long-term vision. I think they know they're not going to be very good next year, but there's pieces there And then I really think that they're hoping that by year 2 under Kubiak, you now have a second-year quarterback. Maybe they can have a Drake May experience. They have enough solid pieces now on defense. They have they got back a Jacoby Meyer, but then they actually have somebody that can throw to Jacoby Meyer. You know what I mean? Like, I know they got rid of him, but like they got a number one receiver that they feel comfortable with. They have the running back. They have the interior line. They need tackles. And they have the tight ends. They need tackles, and they just need help on the edges, I think. And we're seeing this. Notice how I'm always telling you that the edges are probably a little bit overcompensated for, and you're kind of overestimate their value. But at the end of the day, like if you don't have that explosiveness on offense or defense, you can have the most sustainable inner core, but like that's great. But do you have a finisher? You know what I mean?
Right. All right. Buffalo, they promoted Joe Brady, brought in Pete Carmichael from Denver. Was he? No, Joe Lombardi.
No, Lombardi. Yeah, that's another big weird. That's weird because at the very end, we'll kind of hit on some of this stuff, but we might as well just go over this right now because I think there is a Broncos Bills tie here. So Joe Brady is a Sean Payton disciple. Carmichael was with him when he was working at the Saints. So I think that's kind of like hiring your old boss type deal, but you guys speak the same language. Lombardi gets like fired for the Broncos simply because I think they really wanted to keep Webb. I think that was a Bo Nix thing. Like,
and also Sean Payton was in a mood is what Joe said.
Yeah. Look, you know what the mood was? He was told by the ownership that, hey, this is going to happen and this is what we're doing. And we're not losing it. Unless somebody's going to hire him as a head coach, we're not losing him. So this is like Bo Nix's best friend. We're keeping him on. Like we're giving the franchise quarterback the control of the franchise, right? Sure. If there's any position, and this is one of the things where I thought Brady always did it, but then he also had Belichick to contend with, was like he never was just like, I'm taking over roster management, right? Like, but I do think this is a little bit of it. But I think the most exciting hire on this, because Joe Brady's a little bit of a okay, like Jim Leonard and the defensive staff that he's put together, they're going to run that defense that he ran at Wisconsin. He got the band back together. Like all those guys know exactly what is expected in that defense. It's going to be a lot of moving parts. It's going to be fun. I love that he got John Fox as the senior assistant. So he's doing it the right way. This is this is a staff that's really good mix of like older established coaches, but then also some young coaches that are hungry and they're kind of on that innovative side.
All right, let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. Kevin Stefanski, I think this is the best hire. If Michael Penix works and he's hurt again, which in his career, that's like the 4th ACL tear. I don't know if it's both knees, but like got to figure other things out because you might have the best running back in the league. Drake London's legit. I don't know if they hold on to Kyle Pitts. The defense has some pieces. They hold on to Jeff Ulbrich and say that we're going to try and figure that out and work from there. But you bring in Kevin Stefanski, who obviously has took the Browns to the playoffs twice. Good God. And so what do the Falcons look like going forward, and what kind of staff are they putting together to make that picture look right?
Now, Kevin Stefanski, I mean, you talk to Cleveland fans, I mean, they will tell you, like, there were some things, game management, the quarterback situation, I don't think he really had a lot of control over, but I just think that there's some things where too reliant on the run game. But again, I go back to the quarterback. So some of their arguments for them being ready, or, hey, he kind of lucked into those. I don't think you luck into being coach of the year twice, especially the Browns. So I think that there's a lot of play there. I think that this is one of those situations where it's going to clean up and stabilize what they're doing offensively. Last year, they got really spread heavy. I thought it was really interesting. They were doing some weird stuff with their tight ends. Obviously, Pitts is kind of that hybrid player. I think that you are able to kind of unlock him a little bit in a situation where he's catching a ton of drag routes, right? Like, and he's going to be open. Nobody's going to be able to cover him because he's going to be running away from everybody. I love Bijan Robinson in this kind of Shanahan style offense. I think Penix is going to do well in it. Kirk Cousins, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It looks like they're going to cut him and he will be a free agent. But if he stays, I think Why I almost would argue you keep him because you don't really trust that Penix is going to stay healthy, and then he can play in this offense. And I think he can still do it too. Ulbrich to me is a good hire. I think he proved that he kind of fixed that defense in a way that I think Morris couldn't necessarily get it done with the edges. Now they're going to have to go find another edge. One of their edges got arrested. If you saw that, that was horrible. But I think he can kind of keep the defense simple, keep everything in front of you. And then with the offense, look, it's the NFC South. Just win 10 games. If you win 10 games, you're guaranteed to go to the playoffs.
9. Like
9
games.
Yeah, 9. It's not. Look, the bar.
Some years 7. Like, I mean.
Yeah, you could even get there with 7. We almost saw that this year. So it's like, yeah, the bar is not super high. And this is a roster that I think has pieces that you can add in the draft, maybe grab a couple free agents here or there. And you're looking at it like, hey, we're a bona fide playoff team. We just need to stabilize.
Right. All right. Pittsburgh, good for Patrick Graham. But aside from that, Mike McCarthy, the guy who's got to change out the name tile is like super happy because he's just got to change out the last name. Just like, all right. Tom McCarthy.
We talked about this when it happened. Might be of all of these, might be the worst, just in a sense that it's just like you kind of have an idea. Then you start seeing all the people that he came. Look, if you don't know, because I know like Steelers fans were all like, how could you call us the worst? And it's like, look, go look at his first year when he was with the Cowboys, when he hired all his guys. It was a disaster, which is why the Joneses never let him hire anybody else. And Schottenheimer didn't get to hire anybody until this year. So I think like that's how scarred they were after that year. You look at his offensive staff and it's just like all the same guys. And it's like, but you don't have, look, you have Aaron Rodgers, but you have Aaron Rodgers. Maybe. Right. And 2, like, do we think he's as good as Dak is right now?
No.
Right. So you had Dak, you had CeeDee Lamb, you had some talent when you were with the Cowboys, which we were able to keep. So I do think the offense does well. But I think the best hire on this and the only salvageable thing about this is Patrick Graham. I think Patrick Graham injected into the defensive DNA that is already there works so well. If there's a seamless transition, it's that. And I'm excited for him. I think that's a good hire.
Yeah. Other than that, and they're competing for in the AFC North. 8-9.
It's going to be interesting because the Ravens are going to have that adjustment period. I think that the Ravens, we talked about it. I think the Ravens fix it really fast. I think the Bengals, look, the Bengals are a hot mess just because of ownership, and the GM is kind of crazy. Trey Hendricks.
The Browns, that might be the only hire that's worse, but we'll talk about that here in just a second. Let's talk about the Dolphins, who are just kind of tearing it down to the studs.
Yeah, we all know what this is.
All. Except for, like, let's keep the bathroom kind of, just because Quinn Ewers is he might be something.
Yeah, we basically hired the whole front office of the Packers to come with Jeff Hafley. Hafley's defense, I think, is very comparable to what they were doing with Weaver. So I think there's going to be a lot of elements there. But you mentioned it. Like, there's just not a lot of high-end talent on this roster. They have 1 or 2 guys on defense. They have 1 or 2 guys on offense. Can Quinn Ewers become a Brock Purdy? I don't know. I think like Bobby Slovic, they're really the easy button there. I think you say, look, Bobby, don't get so crazy like McDaniel did, but like run the Shanahan McVay system and let's work that. I think it fit. You put it in our notes. It's basically Quinn Ewers' is comfortableness. I think we've talked about this before. Sarkisian's offense is essentially what it's kind of the college version of what McDaniel was trying to run. So there's going to be streamline because it's not a total dumpster fire, because I think that they feel like they can win, 6 or 7 games with Quinn Ewers. It's just, there's some work to be done.
And I mean, Jeff Hafley was a head coach at Boston College. And I mean, like, just a couple years ago, now these players coming in, some of the players that he might have been recruiting just a couple years ago, similar to Jim Harbaugh at obviously a smaller level because he was at Michigan versus Boston College. But just kind of an interesting note there, and a guy that had some head coaching experience, regardless of the level that it was at. All right, Cardinals, let's get some nepotism done. Some Mike LaFleur, just come on down.
Yeah, but we've had Kubiak. This was definitely a year of
Harbaugh.
We've had like either the retread guy or that we've had oh, hey, you're a named guy. So yeah, we get Mike LaFleur, the brother, right? Nathaniel Hackett, who I'm sure people are not super pumped to be the offensive coordinator, but you're going to have LaFleur calling it. They keep the defensive coordinator, which again, very interesting. But we're going to look at three teams, the Raiders, the Cardinals, and the Browns, who are all longtime family owned, don't have a lot of cash. I think we're going to overpay for the offensive guy. And then we got to just get the guy off the books, so we're going to internal hire. We don't want to mess with it. We just spent a ton of money on the defense last year. They had a ton of injuries in the back half. So I think a lot of people like Nick Rawless, but if you're a Cardinals fan, yeah, it's very much just like a what?
Yeah. All right, the Cleveland Browns. If there is any guarantee of a team that will be on this list next year, it's them, because they hired Todd Monken.
Yeah, I don't know. It is an interesting hire. I will say this though. I just think that they probably reached out and a lot of people said no. I really do. I think a lot of people pulled a Ben Johnson.
So when they say that there's 32 of these jobs, there's really 31.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Or is there 30 because of the Jets too?
Yeah, that's the other one. I think that the problem that you have with the Browns is even Monken said it the other day, was talking like they're still dealing with the quarterback situation.
They have Deshaun Watson on the books.
And they were talking about he's throwing around again. And we're like, what?
Stop.
Yeah, and look, I know that he's a hot button topic for all the off-field stuff, but I mean, even if you go back to it, he was. Look, let's just take look. That is the story part of it. But if you just look at it from an objective coaching view, he didn't play for 2 years,
and then he got hurt.
He was great. He was great, but he didn't play for 2 years. And then when he came back, he wasn't great
for 6 games, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, and so he really hasn't played. He's basically been
in 3-4 years.
Yeah. And so I think it's kind of like the whole deal with Kaepernick. Everybody's like, oh, Kaepernick will come back. And you're like, nah, not now. I mean, he hasn't played in
You can't.
He literally can't. Yeah, because it's you can't, he it's gone. You can't come back and play. I think it's just the fact that they even it even gets brought up, that they're even talking about it. It's a very interesting. And then the whole deal with Jim Schwartz, we could even argue this. We brought it up with the Raiders deal.
Head coach.
Yeah, it's just very odd. And two, it wasn't like people were beating the door down for Monken as the offensive coordinator. I mean, I think if you talk to Ravens fans, that there were even still people yeah, we were better than Greg Roman, but where are we really going with this? Did Lamar really get any better? I think he ran a better offense. I think it was more designed, but it is still very much kind of in that, heavy personnel, not a lot of creativity. He will be interesting. I think he does well, but it's who's your quarterback?
Sanders.
It's going to be Sanders. I think,
and then Arch Manning after that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really what this is. I really do. I think this is. We don't have the first pick, so we can't get Mendoza. There's not a quarterback we really like. We know we're not going to be very good. Let's get a guy that we know can then draft because here's the problem. Your head coaching opening was this year. You probably couldn't go another year. I don't think Stefanski wanted to go another year. I think it was mutual. And so I think you have a situation where, yeah, we fired you in 2025. We're drafting in 2026. There's only one quarterback. He's going first overall to the Raiders. We're not in that. Let's at least set ourselves up to where we don't have a one and done and look like a total dumpster fire. Let's get it set up.
I think it's a one and done. It's like David Culley. Here's a job because you've been around the NFL forever. You've been around the league forever. Get a job for a year. After this, you're fired.
I do think that there is high potential that he's gone after a year just because of the owner's
It's
kind
the
of
Browns.
The owner's kind of a guy that, can just shoot from the hip sometimes. I think the defensive coordinator position, they're going to go with a guy that runs a similar scheme. If you look at it, it was the guy from the Falcons, Rutenberg from the Falcons. It's Uden from the Texans, and then I think it's the Tarver that's on staff right now. And I think what they're going to do is we run a wide 9 man coverage concept. Okay, well, we'll get the Falcons guy who comes from the solid tree. We'll get the guy from the Texans comes from the solid tree. So it's I can't hire Jim Shorts, but I'm going to hire the next closest thing. And
let's start calling the DeMarco Ryans tree, just the bald-headed tree.
The bald-headed tree, the bald-headed defense. So because dude, it's crazy. Because even I didn't even think about that, but now that you say it, it's even DeMarco
Ryans, Gus Bradley.
Did Albert shave his head? I think so too. So he's got a beard with shave. Oh my gosh! Get it. It's the bald-headed coaching tree. All right, let's real quick because we've almost gone an hour. Let's go through the defensive coordinators really quick. Or who are the retreads staying in that have been our coordinators. The San Francisco is going to do a little bit of a pivot and go to Raheem Morris. I'm interested to see what he's going to take from Ulbrich and that mixture that they were running in the Falcons and then bring to the 49ers. I think that's kind of like McVay and Shanahan traded their friend, right? Hey, hey, McVay, I'm going to take your buddy over here and I'm going to bring him, because it's McVay couldn't hire him because Shula didn't get a head coaching job. Packers, I talked about this on a couple of Packers podcasts of just Jonathan Gannon. People were not excited about this, but I do think they were doing interesting things in Arizona because of the talent there. They were getting stabilized. Then they had just everything went wrong. I think he's going to be a lot like Brandon Staley. Really good defensive coordinator. Maybe wasn't ready to be a head coach. Mike McDaniel, I think, is with Justin Herbert. I think that's going to be fantastic. What do you think?
I think that's going to be kind of interesting because Jim Harbaugh always wants to run the ball, and Mike McDaniel's fine. And he's finally got a quarterback that if he can stay healthy, and even more so if Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater can stay healthy, that offense can be really, again.
So he's actually going to have
pumping up the teams we're not fans of and have to
I know, I hate it, dude. I freaking hate it. We're supposed to be homers. I know. Go Broncos. Okay, now the Jets are interesting because he basically fired everybody on staff. He brought Frank Wright as the offensive coordinator,
who was bad as the Stanford coach.
Yeah, I mean, I get why he was a Stanford coach. I think it's an interesting hire. Who again? That roster, to me, I mean, we talked about it when you did Fields as your quarterback. It was unserious, right? It's just you're unserious, about this. And then somebody told me somebody commented on something because I'm starting to go through Jets clips. Was I think it was on Blue Sky maybe, and it was supposedly he told people that he let Steve Wilkes run his defense, and I'm bro, that was all cover one, all the time. That was your defense. Yeah, it didn't have a 3-4 vibe because you didn't have that line. You didn't have a Barnes guy. But bro, that was your defense. Don't say that. That's not nice.
Don't put that on Steve Wilkes' name like that. Don't do my boy Steve.
Dude, Wilkes has had.
He got fired from the Cardinals after a year. Got fired from the 49ers. Now he's getting blamed for the Jets not getting a pick all season. Justice for Steve Wilkes.
They won. They were winning. They should have probably gave him the head coaching job. Then he goes to the 49ers. He's got Shanahan yelling at him in the middle of the game because he's trying to run Robert Saleh's defense. Then he gets hired by Aaron Glenn, and then Aaron Glenn's hey, you're running your defense, and you're that's not what the film says. So it's
justice for Steve Wilkes on this podcast on this day here on Fourth.
Somebody,
I don't care how good of a coach he is. Does he have a job?
I don't think so. But I feel for that guy. Well, because he's probably getting paid by the 49ers, and he's probably getting paid
he's chilling.
The Jets. But dude, I feel for guys like that get put in situations. All right, let's talk about your favorite team. Eric Bieniemy's back. DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray
Arkansas
as
running
the
back,
running back.
former Dallas Cowboy as your running backs coach.
I'm a huge fan of it, and like I think it is particularly like with the running backs coach. I'm not like looking for the next whiz kid right there. I'm looking for a guy who like knows the position and like knows the proper rotation of it all, because he was in the backfield with a guy like Felix Jones. He was in the backfield with a guy like Darren McFadden. And so like it is going to be interesting. And I mean, he has some experience being at Arizona and Oklahoma over the last couple of years. So I mean, that is kind of hiring they rehired Eric Bieniemy. Everybody knows that he was a running back and a running backs coach. But then you bring in a guy like DeMarco Murray, maybe more emphasis on the running back position. God, please let Jeremiah Love fall to us.
Yeah, for real. And I think like too, Bieniemy gives you that hard edge that you guys have been missing. I mean, I really do think that's look, everybody talks about like Andy Reid's practices, they go hard, they hit, they do things like that. Like it's a standard NFL kind of old school way of doing things. But I think that hard edge of just, Bieniemy, that you've missed that. All right, let's go through. We'll quickly hit these. Like we've already talked about Davis Webb with Broncos again. I said this is Bo Nix. This is the ownership saying he's gonna. And I would bet you he gets a little bit of some sort of say in what's being called. David Blau, I think, is kind of same thing. Quarterback.
He skipped a step or two though. Like, I mean, I would have understood if they would have made him like the passing game coordinator or something like that, and then brought in like if they would have hired like Nat Hackett or something like that, or just like a veteran face. It just seems like I know I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to the corporate ladder, but
no, I mean, I do think like I do think that there is he has had he's a former like backup quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And he's been on staff. I think like you hear guys like McNown, Greasy is another one like that have been. I think like you look at that and I think Quinn knows, like we've seen this now, right? Like Joe Brady gets hired with the Bills. You get Webb stays with the Broncos. Blau is going to be the offensive coordinator now for the Commanders. So I think it's like when you have a quarterback, you have to basically, who do you feel comfortable with? And I think that that's actually a positive thing of not doing this. One of my favorite hires was a Jim Leonard hire, but then also I think one of my other ones is Christian Parker, who I know personally, great dude, great coach. His staff has been put together you talk about a young defensive staff too.
How come he didn't get you on staff? You already live in the area. You are like, you could have been an assistant defensive backs coach. You know him personally.
I am maybe in the area, but like if you know anything about Dallas, I am in South Dallas. I am not in the area. And I'm not trying to drive 2 hours of traffic to go up there. Not like I would say no to that job. But no, I think this is a great hire. Young guy, cerebral guy, very like, I think anytime you get old crusty Fangio and is like, I want that dude as my secondary guy, and he's like barely 30, that tells you a lot. And I was like, and then he did not hesitate. He went out and got some dudes on the staff. So I would encourage you, go look at some of the guys that he got on staff. These are all kind of guys that I think are going to be really, really good. Look, they're not going to be great on defense next year, but they don't have to be. They're kind of like the Bengals. Just be 16th.
Just be
16th so we can win, 11, 12 games. Drew Petzig, how do you feel about that? Because I feel like, look, Kyler Murray really kind of limits you in what you can be. But to me, they ran a very similar, probably more gun because of Murray. But I don't think that's I think that it actually fits because he used a ton of tight ends.
Right, and I think that's what's going to be kind of interesting. You're obviously going to have like Dan Campbell in your ear, like run the ball, and go for it on fourth down. And so, like, I think it's going to be a decent mix of things. And they have just so much talent that you're like, Drew Petzing, like, come in and do something with this, because they kind of lost themselves at the back half of last year when a guy like Dan Campbell is calling your play. So it is interesting when you get a guy who has called plays before, but also is 35 or whatever it is.
Well, Campbell to me is like if Harbaugh started calling the off, like
doing steroids.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like if it would be like he didn't get hired because of his offensive acumen. He got hired because he's essentially
a leader of men.
A leader of men. right? Making him call offense takes away from that. And there are guys who can do that and also be the leader. Not saying that he can't, but that's not what look, everybody has like what their circle of competence. Can Dan Campbell call an offense? Yes. They were still relatively successful. It wasn't explosive,
right?
But it took away from who he is. And really,
and they lost games because he wasn't the head coach for moments of the game.
Exactly.
Like they didn't make the playoffs this year.
I think this is a good hire. I think it's a natural fit. I think there'll be some new ideas and some things like that, but I think that this is a natural fit. And then the last one we'll wrap up with is Zac Robinson. If I remember correctly, I think Zac Robinson was with the Rams when
he was like on the early Rams staffs. Like
so I think he was with the Rams with Baker. And so to me, this makes sense. I just think, look, Bowles is really smart. He got Lincoln, right, from the Rams tree. He's going with Zac Robinson from the Rams tree.
Is Todd Bowles ever going to get fired?
Nah, man. Nah, he's going to be like Mike Tomlin. We're going to look up, and you're going to be like, dude.
No, I am not going to look up at Todd Bowles and be like, you know what? That's one of the greatest coaches of our generation.
Hey, he's great. Look, you will never hear me say anything bad about Todd Bowles because I will watch his blitz tapes all the time. I
swear, I think I thought they were going to win 3 games with Baker, and then they've been good for 3.
No, they have. Look, I think like it's a testament to him. Like he's done an excellent job on like holding that thing together and then keeping that where they can win games. This is one of those though. Defensively, they need to rebuild that roster. I think offensively, they're primed to go. I think defensively, I think we're going to see a lot of movement on that side of the ball because that linebacker core if you're going to run zone coverage, your linebackers have to be that interconnecting piece, especially when you run a lot of 5-man pressures, and they just were lost all the time. Right. Or they just couldn't do it. You know what I mean? So I think the talent's there, but we'll end with that. So that is your lineup. I mean, we're giving the people what they wanted. They wanted us to go through and break this down. We did it. I think this is what it was a relatively historic. So almost
there were 10 openings. 10 openings.
And I counted, somebody said there were like 20.
Real quick note that we didn't get to, because there were 10 openings, Sean McDermott didn't get a job.
Oh, yeah. We didn't cover it. We kind of skipped over that in the notes, but yeah, he did not get a job.
I think that's kind of interesting. Does Sean McDermott, like, is he next year's #1 candidate? But like, also there's Tomlin and whomever the hot coordinator is like, I thought he was the #1 candidate for the Raiders job.
We'll know in August when McDermott starts showing up at like some camps. And what those camps are and where he's going, we'll tell you. Like, is he doing research, or is he just kind of BSing around and like just going and seeing buddies? Because I think
that hanging out with Anthony Campanile, like what the?
Yeah, that will tell you. So I think. Look, we'll obviously, as more people get hired, because like when the Browns, like next week, we'll cover who the Browns end up hiring, because that'll probably actually happen today or tomorrow. So remember, we're recording this on Monday, we're releasing on Wednesday, so we'll cover that as you keep going. Stick with us this offseason. If there's something you guys want to hear, put it in the comments. Especially like I said, half of y'all are listening on MatchQuarters. Just put it in the comments if you're a subscriber. If not, put it wherever you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you are. Go ahead and give us a comment what you guys would like to see, because we're always open for ideas and looking for different ways that we can talk about football and continue talking about football. So, Felix, thanks for joining me today. Again, make sure that we are hitting that subscribe or follow button, whichever one it is. If you're on the MatchQuarters platform, please pick something on either Spotify or Apple. Go follow us and give us a review. That really helps us out. So again, like I always say, we're trying to get Felix out of his mom's basement. So thanks for joining us. And go watch football. Find the DVR it or something.
Go watch a 30 for 30 or something.
Yeah, go watch 30 for 30. Come on.